City Council meeting, and welcome everyone. Invocation by Reverend Whit Malone.
Good evening. Let us pray. God of justice and of mercy, we pause for this brief moment to once again thank you for the gift of life, for the gift of this very day, and for the opportunity we have to serve the people of our city. We thank you for the joy of this season, and we pray for those who cannot find joy. We thank you for family and friend with which to gather, and we pray for those who are still lonely. We thank you for special foods and decorations and gift giving, and especially for children, and pray for those who do not have these things. As we conduct this business tonight, we ask that we might act with character and conviction. Help us to listen with understanding. Help us to speak with charity. And give us always a spirit of service, reminding us that we are stewards of your authority. Guide us, God, to be the leaders your people need. We ask this as your children, confident in your goodness and love. Amen.
Please remain standing for the movement. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
No special presentation. Persons requesting to be heard. We have Cliff Moone.
Mayor Pro Tem Wright, I didn't do that right, did I? Patton. I had a phone with members of the council, Mr. Crone, Mr. Berry. My name is Cliff Moone. I live at 2925 8th Street Court Northeast in Hickory, North Carolina. I just wanted to rise to express my appreciation for the continuing proclamations that you have made as a city council in regard to yesterday's Bill of Rights Day, which I think you have as Exhibit 8B, and according to the agenda, and to again express appreciation that we have done that every year for a number of years. As you may be aware, and the mayor referred to this last time, North Carolina is a state that refused to ratify the Constitution until there was a Bill of Rights. You may or may not be aware, I won't test you on this, but that the original Bill of Rights that was proposed by James Madison to the Congress in 1789 was also, I almost didn't do that either, Mr. Seaver, and I knew when Whit was doing the prayer that it was going to come on. But anyway, there were actually 12 amendments, and our present First Amendment is actually the third. I won't give more history on this at the time, but use that as a way of moving to the point that I would like to ask of you, and have it in the record, that in future years that it not be actually necessary every time for us to ask for a proclamation on this, because I'd like also for the city, if they would, to encourage in our libraries, which the library usually does a presentation in the foyer, but to have a public reading of the Bill of Rights on Bill of Rights Day, and to encourage it to be done in our schools as well, because, as you know, in every year, in every generation, it requires vigilance to maintain these rights and these freedoms which all of us care so much about. And each generation needs to be encouraged, I believe, to go back, read, and consider, and look at them again and again, for not only for reflection and maintaining them, but also because, as you may know, yesterday, most in our history, many, if not most, of the major Supreme Court cases that have come down have been around the Bill of Rights, the major ones, the ones that are most influential. And even yesterday, the Supreme Court ruled, that came out this week, that ruled on the Fourth Amendment in a case that came from North Carolina. That all being said, again, I appreciate the city's willingness to put forth a proclamation each year, and hope we'll continue to do those things that will encourage our people to know more about our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Moone. Approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion?
I move approval of the regular meeting of December 2nd minutes.
Ms. Patton, we have someone who'd like to speak. I know you didn't ask for other persons.
Oh, so anybody else signed up?
You don't have to sign up to be heard.
Okay. Later, Mr. Pope.
Thank you. Appreciate it. City Council, Mayor Pro Tem, Attorney Crone, and Mr. Berry, City Manager, thank you for allowing me to speak before you this evening. There is two items that I would like to address. One is, I thank you, and I know that we have not always been on the same page with the same mindset, and we have had differences. But what I appreciate about that is that yet still, since we have had differences, you still show and give me the respect that any citizen of the city of Hickory deserves and asks for. I would like to say that now, since the bond referendum is over, it passed by a majority of the voters of the city of Hickory. So I commend you for the work that you did and the work that you are going to be doing after the passing of the bond referendum. I will also say to you that I have personally expressed an interest in serving as part of the committee that will be appointed to work with that bond referendum and the results of that bond referendum. So I would like to just publicly let you know that. I filled out the paperwork that was sent out for those who had interest, and I just wanted to let you know that I did express my interest. The second thing that I would like to address is I would like to make a request under Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act, Section 504 of the ADA. That request is, I would like to have provided to me in layman's terms, simplified, layman's terms, not in legal terms, all expenditures of that $40 million as it is spent. I would like to have those explanations down to the penny or half penny, what it purchased or what it paid for, and the cost of those items. That, to me, just helps me as a citizen, a taxpayer, to keep informed of what is going on with that $40 million, because one thing that I saw already
3 minutes.
is that the city will be hiring someone to sort of work with and be the executive director of that project that was never mentioned as part of that $40 million expenditure when we were asking for voters to vote yes or no. So that is just an example that comes to my mind. I don't know where that money is going to come from, but the city's going to pay it from their contingent funds or not, or whether it's going to come from the grant funds. But I think that citizens are entitled to know how that $40 million is being spent and is spent when it is spent and planned for. Thank you so much, and I would like to leave by saying I hope that each and every one of you and your families have a very Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pete. With the minutes, we had a motion by Mr. Seaver,
Second.
second by Mr. Lael. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. None. And Mr. Wright, Mayor Wright is out, as is Mr. Zagaroli. Otherwise, everyone else is here. All right, that passed unanimously. And now for the approval of the minutes for the special meeting of November 25th. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved by
Meisner.
Meisner. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, pass unanimously. Reaffirmation and ratification of second reading. Do I have a motion to approve?
Make a motion.
Mr. Guest, a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Seaver. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Any items removed off the consent agenda?
I'd ask item F be removed for individual consideration.
All right, do I have a motion?
Move approval of the consent agenda with the exception of item F.
Second.
All right, a motion by Mr. Meisner, second by Mr. Seaver. All those in favor, with the exception of F, please say aye.
Aye.
Pass unanimously. Mr. Berry?
Item F is staff recommendation that council consider a resolution of intent to lease city-owned property to the Service League of Hickory. You actually have a number of these on your agenda tonight. The city has several different leasing and property relationships, primarily with nonprofits throughout the city, and it came to staff's attention that many of those had expired. So we're trying to make those all current. This particular lease is for property at 506 3rd Avenue Northwest to the Service League of Hickory, and in the nominal amount of $1 per year. And I'll be happy to answer questions or ask staff to further address as needed.
Yeah, I had just to clarify, page 48 of the agenda packet, the second page of the lease, it indicates the use is for a daycare center. That's not what the Service League intends to do.
Yep, you're right. Must be a carryover from the other lease.
Community Ridge.
Yep.
Community Ridge is correct, I think.
Yep, you're right.
So I'd like to move that publication of that lease be amended to what use should be indicated.
What about the language of, try not to be too specific with what the Service League does, maybe league activities consistent with their mission, something to that effect?
I'd be okay to that and move such.
Do I have a second?
I second that.
Motion by Mr. Lael, second by Mr. Seaver. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pass unanimously. Okay. Mr. Berry?
Thank you. Next item for y'all's consideration this evening is, we got informational items. Two informational items, both related to travel to the National League of Cities, Mayor Wright's travel, as well as Councilman Zagaroli's travel to the National League of Cities, which was in Austin, Texas, November 19th through the 22nd. Their report of expenses related to that travel. Under new business, your first public hearing this evening, I'll ask Mr. Cal Overby, Principal Planner for the city, to come forward and present a rezoning petition prior to council opening the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. Mayor Pro Tem Patton, council members, Mr. Cronin. First item on the agenda regarding public hearings is a request by Mr. Alan Cheung as agent of Christian Science Society to rezone approximately 6/10 of an acre of property located at 3048 North Center Street from R2 residential to office and institutional OI. To give you an idea of where we're at in existing land uses, the subject property is shown in red. This is Fire Station 6. This is where there's a restaurant and it's a Wild Walk restaurant, and this will be Bell Hollow Shopping Center. We're going northward in this direction toward Alexander County and Lake Hickory. Currently, there is a structure on the property that was used by the Christian Science Society as a reading room. It's not actually a residential structure. It's a non-residential structure for all intents and purposes. There's another home in this area that's actually in disrepair. You're looking at residential neighborhoods. You're also looking at residential properties on this on the west side of Center Street here. The next map is showing the zoning of the surrounding areas. As you can see, the area here is predominantly R2 residential, with the properties adjacent to and surrounding Bell Hall Shopping Center being CC1, which is Community Commercial 1, is the zoning designation in that area. And the final map I'll share with you is our Hickory by Choice 2030 future land use map. And these areas shown in the darker orange is high density residential. This will be our community center core. This is basically at the intersection of 29th Avenue and 127. We're looking at institutional uses in this area and some other types of residential uses surrounding the properties. Staff did an analysis of the request based on the findings and recommendations of Hickory by Choice 2030. Part of Hickory by Choice 2030, which is outlined within the staff report I provided, details that office institution zone is consistent with the recommendations of the plan, provided that they're located along a major thoroughfare and in a high-density residential district. And as you can see, this property here, located basically on the very edge of where that type of zone change would be permitted. So this is your de facto line in the sand, if you will, if the question arises of is where it's at. That question did come up with the Planning Commission, and that's where it's at. The next place of commercial would be where you're looking at here at the green, which is at Clonger Mill Road and 127 also. Staff did find that the request met the requirements also outlined in our Land Development Code. Additionally, our Planning Commission held a public hearing on November 12th, during which they adopted a consistency statement regarding the rezoning, which is provided in your agenda packet. And they voted 7-0 unanimously for recommendation approval to council. Staff concurs with the recommendation of the Planning Commission, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
There isn't any change in use plan because worship can be in an R2, can't it?
Yes, sir. From a use standpoint, any type of religious institution, whether it be Christian, Buddhist, whomever, is permitted in residential districts by right as part of the Religious Protection and Use Act. I forgot the exact acronym for it. The proposal is to basically change it to office institutional. The applicant, Mr. Cheung, who is actually here tonight, intends to basically renovate the building for a medical office is what he's looking at doing. It's not going to take any outward changes as far. It's a non-residential building, or it'll remain a non-residential building, if that answers your question, sir.
No questions, Ms. Cook? Thank you. I'd like to open the public hearing, and before we do that, I'd like to explain that we have no cheering, no jeering. We are respectful of all citizens to get up and speak for a public hearing. You'll be asked to identify yourself, and each side will be given 15 minutes equal time for their presentations, and those on either side can divide it up any way they want. And so I declare the public hearing open and ask for anyone that wants to speak in opposition to this proposal. Seeing no one, I would ask for anyone who wants to speak in favor of this proposal. Yes, sir. Come on up. Please state your name and your address for the record.
Hi, my name is Alan Cheung. I live at 8236th Avenue Northwest. Hickory. Actually, just a couple of blocks up from that facility that we're talking about. I moved here about a year ago with my family from California. I have a sister-in-law here, and we fell in love with the place, and we decided to move here. We have 2 little children. We're trying to hopefully raise up in the Lord, and basically, my wife and I are both physical therapists, and we have always dreamed of opening a place and just providing, good therapy care. And this opportunity came up, and we're hoping to be able to do that with the community. And I know a few of the doctors in our church, and just kind of talk to them about the need for therapy here, and we really see just a good potential to help the community in that, and it's kind of our passion. I think that'd be kind of fun to do that. So, if you have any questions, I guess.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any questions? I'll declare the public hearing closed and ask for discussion or motion.
I move approval of the rezoning request.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Whale and a second by Mr. Meisner. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. It passed unanimously.
Your next public hearing, I'll ask the city's Public Services Director and Chief Engineer to come to the podium, Mr. Chuck Hansen, to present to Council the consideration of the closing of the portion of E Avenue Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. Mayor Pro Tem Patton, members of the council. This is, as Mr. Berry stated, a request from Moretz Property Management, Moretz Mills, LLC, to close a portion of E Avenue Southeast. It's sort of the remainder of E Avenue that we left open through the previous closing. At that time, they did not own all the property surrounding this section of E Avenue, and they were able to purchase the remaining property across the street, and they're looking to close the remainders. Probably about 100, round numbers, 135 feet of roadway to be closed. 7th Street and 8th Street, the streets on either end of this would remain public and open like they are today. So this is, there's a map of it in your agenda on page 110. If you need to look at it, it's sort of in the upper right-hand corner. Staff would recommend approval of this closing, and from that standpoint, it matches up with the site plan that's been approved and what they're working under out there today. In this case, it's sort of cleaning up what's left, if you will, now that they own both sides of the roadway. It's sort of in the upper right-hand corner, a little rectangular blocked off on that, page 110. Any questions?
Questions for Mr. Hanson? I declare the public hearing open and ask for persons in opposition, please come forward. Seeing no one, I ask that for anyone in favor of this proposal to come forward. Please state your name and your address.
My name is Ellie Bradshaw. I live at 629 2nd Avenue Northwest. Mayor Pro Tem and council members, attorneys, and manager. I'm happy to be here. I represent the property owner. We ask that the City Council look favorably upon this request, and I'm really here to see if you have any questions for me that I can answer.
Questions?
This was not closed in the original deal because Moretz had not acquired the other property. Now that it's been acquired,
That's correct.
Okay.
The property was owned by a cellular telephone company, and which was involved in a merger and could not be purchased until that merger was complete.
Okay. Very good.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
With that, I declare the public hearing closed and ask for discussion or a motion.
Just one little word. I was happy to fill in for the mayor on a ribbon cutting at one of the tenants of Moretz Mills.
Ryan.
Friday.
Yeah.
And just fortunate enough to follow a big tractor trailer coming out of there, and I patiently was watching, and at the brouhaha we had before, he had absolutely no trouble making that turn. So we should feel right that we made the right decision.
Do I have a motion?
I so moved that we did.
Motion by Meissner. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Gass. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passed unanimously.
Your next public hearing, I'll ask Mr. Overby to come back to the podium and present to council a voluntary contiguous annexation of property located at 1714 30th Avenue Court Northeast.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. Council members. The next item before you is, as Mr. Berry stated, a voluntary contiguous annexation. It's being petitioned by the owners of the property, Clay and Catherine Franklin. And again, the property is located at 704 30th Avenue Court Northeast. And it's approximately 1 2/10 acres in size. The annexation is being requested in order to obtain public water and sewer services with the petitioner's intention of constructing one single-family home on the property. The map that I have up now basically shows the city limits as well as our ETJ. Our city limits is shown in the blue color, while our ETJ is shown in yellow. As you can see, this property in red is actually located in our ETJ at this time. This map is a location map basically shows existing land uses around the property as well. Again, the property is shown in red. This will be the Lawson's Creek development, Cedars Townhomes, and the Lowe's Food Shopping Center. This is the intersection of 1 Avenue and 16th Street or Sandy Ridge Road. The intention of the of the property owner is to basically build a home similar to the ones in Lawson's Creek and actually access the internal streets versus going out on 16th, which is a bit hairy at that particular location. And this shows the existing zonings around the property. These two planned developments are residential planned developments. Argyle Place is on part of this, and there's also a proposal to construct some additional multifamily here. This is all R2 residential, some R1 residential, office institutional, a little smidgen of industrial, which is a holdover to old Clayton Marcus plant that's used by Paramount Automotive now for the car museum, as well as some neighborhood commercial properties there. Staff did an analysis of all the required services that need to be provided for voluntary annexation and found that they were all available in sufficient supplies and quantities and are not expected to fall below acceptable levels of the property to annex. With that, I'll close and say staff does recommend annexation, and I will be more than happy to answer any questions you have.
And a couple of people asked me, the property owners will not be granted access to Sandy Ridge Road, correct?
No, and they actually wanted their house to be addressed off of the internal street. They actually, when they came in, Councilman Meisner, they requested an address in order to begin the process of this. They wanted their address from the interior street of Lawson's Creek. Just as I said earlier, it's a bit hairy trying to get out at that location. I wouldn't even dream about trying to make a driveway there.
Any other questions for Mr. Overby? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, declare the public hearing open and ask for persons in opposition to the proposal to speak. Seeing no one, I would ask for persons in favor of the proposal to speak. Seeing no one, I declare the public hearing closed and ask for a discussion or a motion.
Move to be approved.
Second.
Motion by Meissner and a second by Leal. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Passed unanimously.
Your final public hearing this evening, I'll call on Mr. Overby again to present text amendments to the city's land development code. Annually, city staff review the land development code to make tweaks and adjustments to keep it current. Those recommendations were brought to your Regional Planning Commission on November 12th and forwarded to you all with a unanimous positive recommendation. I'll ask Mr. Overby to review those text amendments with you.
Thank you, Ms. Berry. Council members again. The item before you is text amendment 1403. As Mr. Berry said, this is part of staff's annual review of our land development code. At that point in time, we typically look to see what worked, what didn't work, what needs to be tweaked, and what the state gave us. Tonight, the request is again to amend Articles 6, 7, and 14. These basically relate to accessory dwelling units, temporary care, healthcare structures, and a definition. The first portion of it, which deals with accessory dwelling units, is amendments to Articles 6, 7, and 14. The amendments to Article 6 would basically provide that accessory structures are permitted on accessory dwellings are permitted on residential lots where the primary structure. And it also gives some requirements as to where they're located with relation to the house, and also their size with relation to the house, primary home, that is. Article 7 would be amended to have some dimensional requirements. Those are your building setback, your height, and things of that nature. In Article 14, the final portion of this particular portion of the amendments would be to amend definitions to add a definition of what a accessory dwelling unit is and what it all involves. The next one is actually handed to us by the NC North Carolina General Assembly through Session Law 2014-94. This was mandated by the state to allow for temporary healthcare structures in residential settings. And these are allowed in any residential zone if they're either occupied by a caregiver or someone receiving care. And again, these are intended to be temporary healthcare structures. But they come with a number of different conditions as to what qualifies for a temporary healthcare structure. And I outlined these here. And some of these are rather odd, but that's just how they came out of the legislation. The first is that these structures can't exceed 300 square feet, which is fairly small. It's about the size of a lawnmower shed, to be honest with you. Only one structure is allowed per lot. Again, they can only house the caregiver or the person receiving care. It has to be on one of those individuals' property that they're on. It has to be connected to public water, sewer, and power. And it has to be removed within 60 days of it no longer being used for that purpose. This was all laid out in the session law that I provided to council. Again, I don't know where this came from. I didn't follow it. It wasn't even on my radar. It just was something I happened to be reviewing the session laws, and there it was. So it's before council tonight. Will we get any of these? I don't imagine so. I would imagine someone would come in for a accessory dwelling unit before they put someone in a 300 square foot building. And the final amendment is a amendment to our definition section, Article 14, to add a definition of the term premises. This was brought to our attention dealing mainly in regards to some legal cases as to what actually is a premise. And some jurisdictions were challenged because they didn't have a definition of what it was. I basically went around to hundreds of websites throughout the country looking for different examples and found some that kind of worked, some that didn't, and kind of merged them together. And staff reviewed it and came up with this particular definition of premise, of how to define the term premise. With that, I'll close and say staff found these to be consistent with our Hickory by Choice 2030 plan. It's also consistent with our land development code. And as Mr. Berry previously mentioned, our Planning Commission did review them and adopted a consistency statement that you've been provided and recommended approval. And we concur with staff's Planning Commission's recommendation. I'll close and answer any questions you may have.
Under definition of structure, could that be a trailer, wheels?
The healthcare structure, Mr.
Right.
Seaver? Actually, I asked that question to our to Catawba County Building Services, and if you can see in the session law, there's actually a reference to the North Carolina Building Code of what it is, and it's not a mobile home. It's the explanation I got was it's more along the lines of some type of modular unit, which is state building code. I'm not sure where you would find a 300 square foot building like that. I'm not sure the circumstances where this legislation came from, so I'm not sure of that. But even park model units, are larger than that. Like if you go to a campground or something and your host has a park model, they're even larger than 300 square foot. I have a lawnmower shed that's a little bit larger than 300 square foot.
There are certain groups like, for Lions, for instance, have a vision van that they'll come places. They don't usually sit there that long. And I think that would be more like a trailer than it would be something that they would build and tear down.
Yes, it would need to be. I would imagine it has to be some type of mobility to it. I guess we'll see if we are approached with one of how to review it.
Any other questions?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll declare the public hearing open and ask.
I'm sorry, I had a question. I was actually trying to find the answer to my question before asking. Do you mind?
Yeah, please.
I apologize. Under the accessory dwelling units, the proposed ordinance says that in no case shall an accessory dwelling unit be constructed between the primary dwelling and any adjacent street. So it essentially excludes any lots that are double frontage from being able to construct a primary an accessory dwelling unit.
All those two frontages, unless it's on the other, unless it's to the side of the house. So if you have, say you have a lot.
So we have lots in Hickory that are double frontage.
Yeah, say if you have a lot with double frontage and you have your house here, you could directly build it to the sides of it.
But it would. There's no way, no place you could build it that it would not be between the dwelling. Oh, you're saying if your side yard was wide enough?
Sure. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
The main thing that I think that the wording was trying to address was to make sure that you're not going to have an accessory dwelling unit in the front yard of a home, because you have. Say you have a zoning district where you have a 20-foot minimum setback, but whoever builds on the house, on the lot, decides that they're setting their house 60 feet back from the road because they have the lot depth. Thinking what the ordinance is, the draft ordinance is trying to avoid is that in the future someone comes along and builds an accessory dwelling unit in the front yard of the house, which lots of restrictive covenants for neighborhoods would preclude that, but in a lot of the older neighborhoods in Hickory, those either do not exist or no longer being enforced, and that is why that statement is in the draft ordinance, sir.
Well, it's not written that way. It's written to prohibit lots that have double frontage from them being able to build an accessory dwelling unit unless they have adequate side yard. I mean, I live in an area of town where the lots are long, narrow, and deep, with very little side yard.
Yeah, you may very well.
I mean, for purposes of zoning, it would seem like, I mean, you consider there's a front, each lot has a front yard, a side yard, and a rear yard, right? For purposes of zoning.
Unless it's a double frontage lot, which those are prohibited in our ordinance from being created. If you have legacy lots that are like that, you have them, but you don't have those moving forward.
Oh, okay, there are no.
Yeah, those have been. The city's had an ordinance basically prohibiting those for a number of years. That's kind of, like I said, there may be some legacy lots out there that are like that.
Right. Okay. I don't want to belabor it, but I just noticed that was the case. And then on this business with the so on the business with the temporary health care structures, I may not be reading this law right because I read the general statute. So you go on over to section 5, which is page 140 of the agenda packet.
Section 5 of the
section 5 of the actual it's House Bill 625.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I don't understand this part that is added, that last sentence. Temporary family health care structures, which is what we're talking about, right?
Yes, sir.
Shall be considered dwellings for purposes of this part, provided that any ordinance provision requiring minimum square footage shall not apply to such structures. And we said we got a 300 square foot minimum.
Yes.
I don't understand
Yes.
And I'm asking, and I apologize, Mr. Dudley, I'm asking you to explain.
Yeah,
The state's drafting. I don't, I'm not.
I wish I could provide you with a clear, concise answer.
Yeah, because it's pretty clear in that under on the first section that you can limit it to 300 square feet. So,
to be perfectly honest with you, Councilman Lale, I'm not sure what that final sentence is intended to mean. It may be that if there's I'm not sure if it would apply to any restrictive covenants as maybe an overriding authority, but this statute specifically is geared toward local government, so that's a bit confusing. I noticed it in there too, and I couldn't understand why it was stuck in here either.
okay.
I think it may be talking about a storage shed that's already there or something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this came from Raleigh, right? I mean, this is not anything that really they have. We can't pass any rules that are in conflict with them. So, I mean, we're going to have this. So it doesn't really matter. It was. I didn't particularly understand it, but I'm glad that we have that minimum in there. And it sounds like, as far as you're concerned, 300 square feet is the minimum that somebody'd be able to do. So
yes, that's a weird bar to.
Yeah,
it's what it is. So.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Oldme.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I declare the public hearing open and ask for anyone who would like to speak in opposition to please come forward. Seeing no one, I would like for anyone speaking in favor of this proposal to come forward. Seeing no one, I declare the public hearing closed and ask for discussion or motion.
I move we approve this ordinance, I guess, or state statute, whatever it is. Whatever this thing is.
I have a motion by Mr. Seaver. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Lell. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. All right, and departmental report.
Thank you. One departmental report this evening, and I'll call on Captain Thurman Wisnett of the Hickory Police Department to discuss a recommendation to increase taxi cab meter rates.
Thank you, Mr. Berry, and Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, Mr. Crone. Briefly tonight, if you'll recall, I believe at a November meeting, two representatives from our local taxi cab company came forward requesting a rate increase or requesting for staff to take a look into if a rate increase was warranted. So we have done that, and just to give you a quick background, the City of Hickory for years has regulated taxi cabs under Chapter 30 of our Code of Ordinances. Taxi cabs are passenger vehicles for hire equipped that calculate their fares with the use of a taxi meter. So there's two different kinds, but what we're talking about tonight are those that actually have a meter in the vehicle. Any taxi cab that operates in the city by city code must use a taxi meter, and the taxi meter rates are set by city council. And the last time that we have come before you and a rate increase was issued was in May of 2006. And currently we only have one company that utilizes taxi cabs in the city. Since that time, we have met with management. We've met with some citizens to get some input, and also our staff has surveyed and called and looked at city codes of quite a few other places around cities in North Carolina and one in South Carolina to kind of gauge where we are and where we need to be. Just to give you kind of a baseline of where we are today with our rates, regulated rates. Currently, you have a starting rate if you were getting a cab. It's referred to sometimes as a drop charge that covers the first eighth of a mile. Currently, that's $2. So when you get in a taxi cab, it starts at $2, covers your first eighth of a mile. From there, each additional 1/8 of a mile is 25 cents per 1/8 of a mile, which equates to $2 a mile. There is a wait time charge that's regulated currently at 40 cents per minute or $24 an hour. That's used on rare occasion for folks that take short trips and maybe don't want to, they're going to a convenience store somewhere, they're just going to run in and come back out. and then a per trip package handling charge, which is currently 25 cents. And I'm told, meeting with the management of our local taxi cab company, it's not even a charge that they use. So what we did, we actually looked at 29 cities. All but one was in North Carolina. We found that 7 cities didn't regulate taxi cabs at all, and 22 of the 29 did. The meter rates of the unregulated cities, to no surprise, were quite a bit higher than the rates of those that were regulated. And there was mention, I understand, in November of the possibility of maybe having a flat rate minimum charge, and we found that only 2 of the 29 cities actually had that. I think in doing our research that it looks like maybe the representatives from the taxi company actually called the cab companies and not the cities, so there was a little confusion maybe there. So we looked at all 29 cities. You'll see that our current regulated rates are in green compared to the average of all of the 29 with starting rate, per mile charge, weight fee per minute, and package fee. Now that includes all the ones regulated and unregulated. We felt that probably the better comparison were to take the 22 that were actually regulated, and you can see that we were just a little bit below in our starting rate and a little bit below in our per mile charge. Again, it's been since May of 2006 since we've had our last increase. So if we were to go to the average rate, what we would need to do is go to a $2.50 starting rate, and each additional 1/8 of a mile would in essence go up 1.5 cents as the maximum. So just to give you an idea, we ran some numbers. This would be a 3/4 mile trip. You see currently that 3/4 mile trip would be $3.25. If it were increased to the average of the 22 cities, that would be $3.83 to give you a gauge. I think maybe we missed one there. So there's a 5-mile trip, just to give you an example, a short versus a longer trip. $11.75 is currently what a 5-mile trip would cost, and it would go to $12.84 if we were to go to the average. So we also looked at what was fuel cost at the time, the last time that we did a rate increase, and you can see in red 2006 on average. You can see the flow charts all over the place there with our fuel prices. So a little bit higher now, obviously coming back down, but you can look at the chart and it's about as unpredictable as it can be. So speaking with, as recent as this afternoon, I spoke with one of the managers from our taxi cab company. We wanted to talk with them about what did this mean with programming the meters. The 1.5 cent increase per 1/8 of a mile wouldn't calculate exactly right. So in essence, currently it's $2 starting fee, and it works out to $2 a mile. If you go to the average, it would be $2.50 start, and it would go to $2.12 a mile. They're going to program the meters to $2.10, so it'll work out evenly, and they're okay with that. We've talked with them, and our recommendation is to do that and make it effective on July 1, 2015, because that's when all the certificate of necessity renewals come in and all the individual driver permits are renewed, and the rates are actually posted and have to be posted in the cab on the form. So that would be just a good time. Give us time to do the inspections, then time to get the meters programmed, and a good opportunity for us to reprint everything at one time. So with that, I will take any questions that you have.
Did you have any input from the people that ride the cabs regularly?
We did. We met with Mr. Pope, who's here tonight. We talked to him, got some input from him, and from what we can tell, everybody seems to be on board with it. So.
I'll say thank you for doing that research. That was, and I appreciate Mr. Lill stopping us the other week and asking that this get done in a timely fashion.
You're very welcome. All right. Thank you.
So I have a motion to accept.
Motion to approve.
I'll second that.
That was from Mr. Guess and Mr. Silver is the second. Do all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
Passed unanimously. Do we have any appointments to boards and commissions?
I'd like to nominate Mary Young, Citizens Advisory Committee, please.
Any other appointments?
Make that motion.
I'll second that. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passed. Do we have any member of petitions, presentation of petitions and requests? Matters not on the agenda. General comments by members of council.
I have just one. I attended the pre-grand opening tonight of the Walmart neighborhood grocery store on Highway 70, and that's going to be a very great addition, not only to our city, but particularly to those folks who live on the southwest side of town. It's something that we've needed for a long time. I met with management and the staff there tonight, and also they presented checks, a total of $8,000, but from what I recall, Cooperative Christian Ministries received a rather substantial check from them. Also, I think Longview School was one of the recipients, and the City of Refuge. So they've already started giving back to the community, and they opened at 7 a.m. in the morning. My understanding is, at least initially, that they're going to be open 24 hours. So the manager there is real excited. He's a Cobb County resident. He's been at the Walmart here in Hickory for the last 9 years, I think, and he's real excited about being here in Hickory. And they hired around 100, and he said that they only took 10 from the other areas, and that the rest of them were hired new people from this area, primarily from Hickory. So it was a real good experience all the way around.
Any other comments? I appreciate everyone being here, and I hope everyone has a lovely Christmas and a great New Year. So, meeting over.